Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And so today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag, even though it's not really mid-year anymore and I wasn't gonna do this one. But Kieran over at KD Books tagged me and I guess I have to do it then. I cannot resist a tag. I cannot let a tag go unchallenged.
Challenge accepted.
The reason I wasn't gonna do this is because I haven't read a ton of books in 2020. Because I've been working my way back through Malice and Book of the Fallen, all of which are really enormous, dense books. That's mostly what I've read this year, and most of the other things that I've read have been books that I read a while ago, so I haven't read a ton of new books. And so I don't really know what my answers would be for this. So I'm gonna try to, even though there are multiple questions in here for which I could respond with a single book. For example, I just read Senlin Ascends, which I love, and could really give that as an answer for a bunch of different books. I'm gonna try not to give the same book for all of the questions and instead pull from the various books that I have read this year. I think I've only read like 16 books this year. Don't judge me. Some of y'all are like, I've only read 83 books this year. I'm like, what? What 83 books have you read? Like, are they all like 600 pages, or are you counting like, 50 page or 100 page books? Because that's more reasonable. But if you've read over 80 like 300 plus page books, what? That's madness, y'all.
This is madness.
I get it in a year, but by July, madness.
This is madness.
Anyway, let's go ahead and get this started. So boom, best book you've read so far in 2020. So I'm gonna say Senlin Ascends. I have a review, either it's up or it's going to be up soon. I just recorded it right before this. Senlin Ascends, I loved it. It's about a guy who goes to the Tower of Babel, which is just this strange tower in the middle of kind of a desert, and just deals with the weird worlds inside of it. So I will say that, but other than Senlin Ascends, it's probably going to be The Bone Hunters, which I reread, I think, back in February, which is the 6th book of the Malazan series. The siege in Bone Hunters, the siege of Yucatan, and the immediate aftermath of that is probably the best 150 pages that Steven Erikson has ever written. It is just so good and so exciting and so fear-inducing and palm-sweatingly awesome that whole book just is filled with just incredible moments. But that 150 pages corresponding to the siege of Yucatan is just really what puts that book over the edge. And I just tore through it. I love Bone Hunters. Boosh. Question number 2, best sequel you've read so far in 2020. So I could say Bone Hunters, but I just used that one. So instead, I'm gonna say Shadows Linger, book 2 of the Black Company series. It really saddens me that I see so many people quit the Black Company series after the first book, because the first book is rough and it's a challenge to kind of get through, especially if you're not already a big fan of the Black Company. But the second book does so many things right that, I mean, the rest of the series is really kind of a breeze after Shadows Linger. So Shadows Linger, book 2 of the Black Company, is my answer for that one. Number 3, new release you haven't read yet but want to. Guys, I'm so behind on my reading, I am not even anywhere close to reading a new release. I kind of looked up books that have come out in 2020, and there are some that are like series that I want to read, but I haven't even read the first book, so I can't answer that. So I had to go all the way back to kind of 2019, so it's a year old, but Memory Called Empire, which is space politics, sounds awesome, based on, the Byzantine Empire, also awesome. So that's what I want to read. I forget who wrote it. I don't have it in front of me. I don't own it yet. But I've heard several people talking about it. Reviews are not, they kind of vary, but I definitely want to read Memory Called Empire. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Again, I don't really have any books coming out the second half of the year. If it was beginning of next year, I would say the last book in the Babel books, but it's not, second half of this year. And so because I don't have anything for myself, I'm gonna say Rhythm of War, book 4 in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. Not because I've ever read any of the books in the Stormlight Archive, because I haven't, but so many of y'all are excited for Rhythm of War that I want it. That's what I'm most excited about, is for this book so that you guys can read it. And I can't wait to hear all of the, well, I can't watch the spoiler reviews, but the non-spoiler reviews, I'm eager to see what you guys think of it because you're all so excited to read it. So My answer number 4, that's for you guys. That's for you guys. All right, number 5, biggest disappointment. I have 2 answers for this. One is a nonfiction book called Destroyer of the Gods, which is about the early church in the time of the Romans. It's a book about why the early Christians were so radically different from the Romans and Roman society and culture at the time. And it sounded really interesting because I really like early church history, especially when dealing with the Romans, but it was not. It felt like a thesis paper that he had to pad with extra wording because the 4 main reasons he gave were good, and that's fine, but he didn't have a ton to say about each of them. So what should have been like a 30-page book was 180 pages, and it just wasn't good at all. And the other is Return of the Crimson Guard by Ian Esselmont, which is a side book in the Malazan series that takes place between books 7 and 8. And so I read it before I read book 8, and I loved the Crimson Guard and thought they were going to be cool. They're not, and I hate that book. I hate it a lot. I did not like this book at all. There was like a 200 of its 800 pages were okay, were pretty good, and so that saved it from being the worst book I've read in a long time. But it was so disappointing, and I have a review for that, but I haven't done Reaper's Gale, so after I do that, I'll pop that review up. It's just me ranting for like 30 minutes about how much I did not like Return of the Crimson Guard. Those are my answers for that. Biggest surprise is number 6. Again, I have read 2 books that I had not read before. Well, 3. I've read Toll the Hounds now. So of the 16 books I've read, 3 of them have been things I have not read. So it's really hard to answer this question because they were all pretty much exactly how I thought they were going to be. So I guess I'm going to say The Black Company, the first book in the Black Company series. I remember tearing through it the last time I read it, which was the second time I read it. And this third time it did not go that well. So I was surprised at how much I didn't enjoy it when I remember liking it way better before. So that's just gonna have to be my answer. Favorite new author is number 7, debut or new to you. Josiah Bancroft, author of Senlin Ascends and the rest of the Books of Babel. I love Josiah Bancroft, guys. If you've watched my Senlin Ascends review, you'll know that I think he is a fantastic writer. I think his prose is envious, and I wish I could write the way that he does. I think he's just great as a storyteller and as a technical writer as well. So I will definitely, he has earned my goodwill to read the remaining 3 books in this series, and without, oh, is it gonna be good? I'm not gonna be suspicious of his sequels until he's given me a reason to. And anything new that he produces, I will give a chance just because this is how much I love Josiah Bancroft. If you haven't read Senlin Ascends, go read Senlin Ascends. Even if you're not a huge fantasy reader, I think that there's a lot to enjoy in this, even for people who don't really go for fantasy. So I'm sticking by that. Number 8, newest fictional crush. What? I don't get crushes on the... I don't really understand this question. This question probably is not meant for me, but if I have to choose, I will say Maria Senlin, Senlin's wife from Senlin Ascends, because she reminds me a lot of my wife. So that will be my answer. Number 9, newest favorite character. It is Thomas Senlin from Senlin Ascends. He's a headmaster. He's he's an academic. He thinks that the world should be a certain way and struggles with his view of the world versus how the world actually is. And I think he's just a fantastic character with immense amount of growth. So Thomas Senlin. Boom, I'm almost done with this. Number 10, book that made you cry. Okay, so books don't normally make me cry. It's hard for me to cry in a book, much easier in like a game or a movie. On the game side, it is this scene from Last of Us 2, where if you've played it, you know what this scene is. But from a book's perspective, it's Reaper's Gale. There is a section, anybody who has read Reaper's Gale, book 7 of the Malazan series, there is a section of Reaper's Gale that is so sweetly heartbreaking that even though I didn't cry, I definitely know that other people did, and if I was more of a crier, I would have cried there also. My heart was hurting, if that helps. Just such a good and sweet and kind of gentle scene in what is otherwise an extremely violent book. So, yeah, definitely Reaper's Gale, and if y'all have read it, you know what I'm talking about. Number 11, book that made you happy, Guards, the first City Watch book of Discworld by Terry Pratchett. I love that book. It's like an old friend. I've read it like 5 times, and I just come back to it, and it is exactly as good as I remember it. It's just funny and, you know, whimsical and filled with kind of British humor and puns, and it's just a feel-good book. I always read it super fast. Love that book. Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought or received this year? Guys, I'm not a super big collector of beautiful books. I think that the prettier the book is, the more unwieldy it is. I don't really like the big chonky hardbacks that have the beautiful covers. Like everyone else I've seen doing this, they got one of the awesome Barnes & Noble collector's editions or some other big, you know, honkin' hardback. And that's not me. I'm much more about function than form. My wife is the exact opposite. She will get something if it is pretty, even if, you know, there's no room for it, but that's not me. And so I don't have a ton of pretty books. I will say that Ian Leno's cover art for Senlin Ascends and all of the other books of Babel, Arm of the Sphinx and Hod King, I think these are really, really awesome covers. So that's really the best I'm gonna have for that question. And finally, what do you need to read by the end of this year? Okay, so I must needs finish the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, at least the first 10. I'm going to take a break for the Esselmont books because I did not like Knight of Knives and Return of the Crimson Guard, but I am going to try to read Esselmont's other Malazan books at some point. So I gots to finish the Malazan book, guys. Gots to. I'm also going to finish the Books of Babel. I definitely want to finish those before the end of the year. I want to start the Powder Mage trilogy because that seems right up my alley, muskets and magic. And I also want to start, if not finish, at least one sci-fi series. I kind of have a dearth of sci-fi because I'm much more picky about my sci-fi books than I am about my fantasy books. So I'm gonna at least get partway through a sci-fi series before the end of the year. So guys, that is my mid-year book freakout tag. There wasn't a ton of freaking out, and I apologize if the books weren't kind of widely spaced over various, you know, authors and genres. It's really 4 authors: Bancroft, Pratchett, Erickson, and Cook. And that's it. But that's because I haven't read a ton of different stuff. Next year, because I am now on the reading kick and I will be done with Malazan, this will probably be much more interesting at the end of the year or at the mid-year one next year. So, Kieran, thanks for tagging me. And if you've read any of the books that I talked about here, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you thought of them. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.